A storm is brewing after the glitzy lights of the Las Vegas Grand Prix dimmed. But the real drama isn't in the twilight desert sky. It's in the garage, it's in the regulation books, and it's about a brand new engine. At the heart, McLaren pointing the finger at Red Bull Racing and asking, did they cheat? Did they break the rules? Did they slip one past the referee? This isn't just a rivalry anymore. It's a demand for justice. It all began just weeks ago at the Brazil Grand Prix, when Max Verstappen's car was fitted with a completely new power unit, despite the fact he had already used his full allocation of engine components for the year. The technical drama peaked when Red Bull made substantial setup changes and installed an entirely new power unit ahead of the race. Why? Because Verstappen had been knocked out in Q1, meaning that he was already destined to start from the pit lane. That meant the usual grid penalty for exceeding the power unit parts quota would not apply. McLaren smelled something in the air. They asked the uncomfortable question: if this change was for performance rather than reliability, does it really fall under the cost cap that all teams are meant to follow? If not, is it fair? McLaren's technical director Neil Holdy explained it bluntly: we can't take a performance engine change because we are not a works team, who have a PU supplier who is happy to supply those engines free of charge. He emphasized that a works team like Red Bull gets privileges a customer team like McLaren cannot. The rules, he said, give the appearance of unfair advantage. And McLaren's boss, Andrea Stella, asked outright, if the engine was changed for performance reasons, it should go in the cost cap. So, let's see if this is the case. Red Bull were quick to respond. Chief Engineer Paul Monahan didn't flinch. I'm not surprised someone has to sort of roll a hand grenade into the situation, he said. What we did is defendable. It's legitimate. There's nothing unusual in it. To Monahan, the move was within the grey rules. Personally, it's a grey area. As far as I'm concerned, we justified to ourselves what we were going to do. If we're questioned on it, we will justify it. But that grey area isn't small, it's sprawling. Because the governing body, FIA, admits it doesn't have the expertise to argue with teams over whether a change is purely for reliability or secretly for performance. Nicholas Tombazis, FIA's single-seater director, put it plainly: we don't feel we have the expertise to argue with them whether it's really a reliability or strategic change. So this has been a weakness in the current regulations. Because the rulebook has holes. The engine change clause for reliability. Fine. But when does reliability become performance? When does a new engine become a secret weapon instead of a band-aid? McLaren insists. These kinds of power unit changes, they challenge the regulations. Meanwhile, Red Bull stands firm. We are absolutely within the regulations, said Red Bull driver advisor Helmut Marko in Las Vegas. Monahan went further. He believes any questioning won't land Red Bull in trouble. I believe our actions we can defend, and there will not be a penalty against us at the end of the year for it. But McLaren isn't convinced, and neither should we be. Because if one team can exploit a grey area, every team is watching the rulebook like it's a cheat sheet. Holdy's words hit hard. It is definitely something that a works team can use that someone like us cannot take advantage of. The implication? The playing field is uneven. There's another twist. The FIA says this problem will be fixed by next season. Tombazis said the rules in 2026 will include a cost cap for power unit manufacturers as well as teams. So we think it's a weakness in the current set of regulations, but we think it gets resolved completely next year. But for now, it's still hanging, and the fallout is already bubbling. So here we are, McLaren demanding the major investigation, accusations flying, the lights of Las Vegas masking the tension behind the scenes. Who bent a rule? Who exploited the grey? Who's got the moral high ground? And will anyone get punished? So, where does that leave us? Red Bull says their engine swap was perfectly legal. McLaren says it wasn't fair. The FIA says, "Hey, we don't know." That's the standoff. And while the media cameras flashed under the Las Vegas neon, the real fire was building in the paddock. Because this isn't just about one engine change. It's about the balance of power. It's about who gets to win and how. And it's about whether rules are really rules or just suggestions for the teams with deeper pockets and cozier partnerships. Verstappen's engine change wasn't done in secret. It was done boldly. Red Bull took advantage of a bad qualifying session, started from the pit lane, changed the setup, dropped in a new power unit, and then, boom, podium. That's not just a recovery drive, that's a strategic masterstroke. Or is it a loophole play? Remember, this isn't some spare part they found lying around. We're talking about a fresh engine, which, in McLaren's words, could bring performance advantages in the final 3 races of the season. Lando Norris is leading the championship. Verstappen, a 4-time world champion, is 49 points behind. And now, he's got a brand new engine while his rivals are stretching their worn-out components to the limit. And here's the kicker. Most teams have avoided taking extra engines this year precisely because of the cost cap. It's not just about performance, it's about staying within the budget limit. So when Red Bull sidesteps this, McLaren says it distorts the very spirit of competition. Andrea Stella laid it out. If the engine was changed, for performance reasons, it should go in the cost cap. This is one reason why we wouldn't do it. In other words, McLaren chose not to make that move, not because they didn't want to, but because the rules made it risky. Red Bull's Paul Monahan counters that. "There's nothing unusual in it," he says. "People have made engine changes from 2022 to this year. We justified to ourselves what we were going to do." He even dodged the key financial question. "I'm not a finance regulation expert, but I believe our actions we can defend and there will not be a penalty." That's the line they're holding. The legal move that sits in the middle of a regulatory no man's land. But McLaren's real issue isn't whether Red Bull broke a technicality. It's that they feel they couldn't have done the same, even if they wanted to, because they pay for their engines, because they're not a works team. Because Red Bull's cozy setup with Honda gives them privileges other teams just don't have. Neil Holdy summed it up. Works teams have an advantage over customer teams because of the regulation or the lack of regulation. The FIA's admission that they can't even judge between performance and reliability. That's fuel on the fire. They're trusting teams to be honest about their intent. But what happens when a title is on the line? When every decision could mean tens of millions of dollars in prize money, sponsorships, and legacy? That's what McLaren is fighting for. Not just clarity on this one case, but a future where rules aren't suggestions. Where the spirit of the cost cap isn't broken by strategic cleverness disguised as necessity. And make no mistake, they're not letting this go. Even if the FIA isn't opening a formal investigation yet, McLaren is already using every political tool they have to raise the alarm. Andrea Stella didn't just question Red Bull's engine, he questioned the entire system. These kinds of power unit changes challenge the regulations. That's not a one-time complaint. That's a shot across the bow. And what happens if Verstappen claws his way back into the title fight with this engine? What if he wins? Will fans, or rival teams, accept that victory as clean? Or will it carry an asterisk? Formula One has always lived on the edge of innovation and regulation. But sometimes, that edge becomes a knife. And this might be the cut that finally forces a reckoning. The 2026 rule changes promise to fix all this. Cost caps for engine manufacturers, stricter definitions, cleaner oversight. But right now, it's the Wild West. Teams playing chicken with ethics, regulators looking the other way, and one question racing through everyone's minds. If Max Verstappen wins this championship, will it be because of talent, or timing, or something far murkier? Let us know in the comments. Is this just smart racing from Red Bull? Or is it time the FIA finally stepped in and cleaned house? Because if fairness is the heart of Formula One, it's beating pretty faint right now.